faster. You're going to intake oxygen quicker, just in every way athletically.
Are you enjoying my stream?
I am.
But that doesn't happen when trans girls are put on puberty blockers at a young age because they never experience.
Sorry, should I take that off?
Yeah, it'd probably help with the conversation. Really help with the flow a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'm very honored that you would allow me on your channel. I've been a big fan for a pretty long time now, and even though we're going to talk about some stuff that we don't agree on, I'm very honored and pleased to be on your channel, man.
Ain't nothing. What's on your mind?
So kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, like as far as prerequisite. I mean, I don't know if you've known this, but I've emailed you on occasion, and you've responded to me. I've wanted to come on this show for a while. I run a channel of my own. It's called Man in the Wall, and I talk about historical revisionism on it. So I do it both from sort of reactionary figures, like I did a response video to PragerU's terrible video on the Vietnam War, and Tom Woods, who's like this like weird paleo-libertarian guy who was like defending Augusto Pinochet. It was weird. And then I also do it from like a lot of like tanky types. Like I just did a video responding to this guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Spooky Scary Socialist. And he made a video that was kind of like defending Stalin. And
it's pretty spooky.
It is pretty spooky. So that's what I do. I've, despite the fact that me and tankies are pretty politically isolated, I've actually become kind of friendly with a lot of them. There's when I'll have to shout this out when I go on. I'm part of a Discord server called DSR Leftyville, which is run by a guy called Fellow Traveler, who Xanderhall responded to once. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm afraid I don't know.
He's the guy who Xanderhall made the video, the Bernier. He was the tanky that he made the Bernier bus video about. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I'm afraid I don't generally watch other people's videos. The only people who I watch content-wise these days are usually video game channels.
Oh, really? I mean, I watch a lot of content. I watch yours, obviously. I watch Destiny's, David Pakman's Secular Talk. Pretty left-leaning guy. I consider myself like a social democrat. I like a lot of what you say, but we have some disagreements. So the stuff that I wanted to go over,
hit me up.
Was a couple of things. The big one I think was is that I feel that some of the rhetoric that you've used in your discussions, like about conservatives, are sometimes not helpful to, I think, your general goal of trying to convert people from the right to the left. So, for example, like when you go off on like screeds about like how conservatives are subhuman and about like how like conservatives are like all terrible people. I feel like that kind of stuff actively hurts left-wing attempts to move people away from the right and towards the left. And as someone who used to be like a neoconservative type but got moved over, I feel like I can say this with some level of authenticity and clarity. Obviously, you might disagree with me on this, but I feel like I can make my point pretty easily.
Nah, no need. You're right.
Really? You think so?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not perfect. I try to manage most of my behavior. Problem is, I just really fucking hate conservatism. Sometimes I just get really angry. But yeah, no. The subhuman stuff generally is not a good idea. The all conservatives are bad people isn't good. I could say stuff like conservatism always leads people in bad directions. It's the same message across, but it's not as essentialist. You want to avoid essentialist language when you're challenging people because they want to feel as though they're capable of being the exception to the rule. If they feel you're not giving them the opportunity to be an exception, they'll dismiss your point outright. For example,
I remember I emailed you about this. Like what happened was,
did I call you a retard in response? Usually, when I get emails like that, I'm very mean to the people who send them.
No, actually, you said that you largely agreed with me.
Oh, okay.
By the way, are we streaming this live now, or? Is,
oh yeah, we're live. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I'm I'm glad to see that you agree with me. I think I first started noticing this right after the George Floyd body cam like footage video. It's the one that I emailed you.
Oh yeah, I was real mad about that one. Dude, I'm sorry. I can only deal with so many conservatives saying like, if George Floyd didn't want to die, maybe he should have been a criminal. And they talk about Breonna Taylor and they're like, maybe she I don't know. Maybe she shouldn't have known a criminal at some point. Like, holy fuck! I can only.
Yeah, like these arguments are ridiculous, and the people who do it are like morally gross. I know that because like back in the day, I didn't quite make those arguments, but I kind of did like some of like the similar like hand wringing stuff, and that stuff's really gross and really reprehensible. And you're right to call it out. But I think that like sometimes like sort of like you said, like it's the whole like not allowing people for the Overton window. Because I imagine like even though you see like a lot of like dipshit conservatives who are like doing that kind of shit, there are also probably like a fair amount of conservatives who are like, yeah, what happened to George Floyd was pretty fucked up. Even if they don't like, they might be like wrong on BLM in general.
I don't know if I see that often though. Because the issue is,
I've seen that in like polls, for example. Like I saw a poll, I believe it was from Pew Research, said something like,
oh,
like
sure.
60%.
Let me be clear. They'll say that on a poll. I don't think they actually believe it. If a person actually believed that what happened to George Floyd was unacceptable, then they would be backlashing against the entirety of the conservative movement. But the entire conservative movement is built upon blaming black people when they die to police. Like that's like a necessary. That's the game right there. If they really cared about it, I don't think they could be conservatives.
I think that this is like sort of like my issue. I think that like when you get right down to it, a lot of people are really just like politically illiterate. So like you can talk to like a lot of conservatives and they'll say like they support stuff like Medicare for all or like higher union rates or like higher taxes on like big corporations. And if you look at the politicians they support, obviously this doesn't reflect that. But I think because like most people are politically illiterate, like they don't know that, and I think that's something that you have to like keep in mind, if you will.
Well,
that, like,
yeah, sure, but you can only excuse that so much, right? Like, so there are two. Wait, I just want to say there are two worlds here. Okay, there's like the rhetorically effective world, and then there's like the what I actually believe is true world. I do believe that conservatives have a black pit in their heart that can be cured, but they either have to believe despicable things or they have to ignore despicable things happening and ignore the fact that they support them happening implicitly with their beliefs and with the beliefs of the people who they support politically. And either way, that's a black hole in your heart. And with regards to like how conservatives handle stuff like George Floyd, for example, I understand that there are a lot of conservatives who probably thought that was awful, but then, you know, Donald Trump kind of doesn't really care and no conservatives kind of really care. And all the conservatives start pushing out videos and news segments about how George Floyd deserved it. Fentanyl Floyd would have died anyway. Cop was a hero, blah, blah. And they think in their heads, I don't necessarily agree with this, but sometimes they're just off, you know? That's the mentality that I really take issue with. I would rather argue with somebody who believed George Floyd deserved to die than one who recognizes that he didn't, but is unwilling to contextualize their moral outrage in a way which reveals to them how bad their broader political beliefs are. Does that make sense?
That kind of makes sense, I guess. I would probably I think I slightly disagree with it. I'd probably take the person who says like what George Floyd did was wrong. But like I'm still voting R versus like the guy who's saying like is literally like the George Floyd died of fentanyl or whatever the fuck. Because I mean,
at least the latter guy is honest, dude. He thinks George Floyd died of fentanyl Floyd. Fuck, at least he's fucking honest, right? I just don't like getting led in a string.
I think that like again, I don't want to like keep deferring back to the same point, but I think like again you have to consider like the fact that like most Americans are like politically illiterate. I don't necessarily think that like that person you're describing is dishonest most of the time. Like I just think that they're illiterate. I think that like they're like a lot of times they're just ignorant, and maybe this is just like a disagreement in like our moral philosophies, but I do think that is a little bit different than like someone who's just kind of ignorant or apathetic versus someone who's actively malicious. Like it's kind of like
the active.
Can I finish the point?
Sure.
Like if I might draw like a legal perspective, like it's kind of like killing someone based on intention versus killing someone on the basis of like either negligence or even just like by complete accident. Like they're all bad, but like one is less bad than the other.
Well, but let's extrapolate that, okay? If you had to explain if you were put in a position where you had to explain to a person that what they're doing is wrong, who would you rather deal with, okay? Somebody who killed a person because they didn't like that person and they own up to the death and they admit they did the killing and they think the killing was a fine thing to do, versus a person who like accidentally killed like some people, but they don't really like know if or why they did it. And then if you point out that it's bad, they'll say, oh yeah, that was bad, but, and then they'll like give you 48 excuses why they had to do it. In my world, I would rather deal with the former person every single time, because I've had so many conversations with Tim Pool types, okay, where I'll talk with them about 40 consecutive issues they'll agree with me on, okay, about media censorship, about healthcare, about education, about like wealth inequality, about like everything. And then it'll be like, okay, so why do you support Donald Trump? He's worse on every single one of those issues objectively than Joe Biden. And they're like, well, you know, like, I don't know, I just don't like Biden. That shit, like, I die inside. I can't do it. I would much rather deal with people who are purposeful with what they do than people who just enable bad systems because they're too stupid or dishonest to own up to the consequence of their beliefs. Now, obviously, and I want to be clear, this is just what I believe. Rhetorically speaking, it's always preferable to treat these disgusting, dishonest dumb fucks like they're children and to lead them to the conclusions you want them to be led to by planting ideas in their head and being nice and coddling them and stuff. I can't help but hate them, though. I mean, our country is the wealthiest of any in all of human history, and we're a fucking joke. Like, people die because of this shit. It's just, political ignorance, I think, is understandable up to a point, but when there are people who are like pro higher minimum wage, pro-immigration, pro-better healthcare, et cetera, and then they're pro-Trump. How much of this is ignorance, and how much of this is they're lying about what they want? How much of this is they know what Trump is, they know what Trump will do, but they recognize they can't defend those arguments, so they'll back up and defend like simple, more easily defensible sock dem arguments up until it comes time.
I mean, I think that like that depends
go
on
to the ballot
like,
box.
I think that's like a person to person thing. I think that like I think that there are some people who are like just genuinely kind of politically ignorant and politically like alienated. I mean, we both take this for credit. I'd like to think that we're both pretty politically intelligent, and we ignore the fact that like a lot of people are just like politically just completely stupid. I mean, like personally, I think that like this might get into a little bit of a difference between us because like you're a pretty hard consequentialist, right?
I'd like to think so.
And I'm not. I'm more sort of like, I'd consider myself sort of more like a soft consequentialist, but I think that like when you're looking at like people, like deciding like whether or not someone's like a good or like a bad person, I think you also have to look at like you can't just look at like what they do. You also have to look at like what they think they're doing. Like if someone is doing a bad thing, but they don't realize that they're doing a bad thing, I don't know if that necessarily makes them like a bad person in whole from like a purely
I don't care about, just to be clear, I'm not a virtue ethicist. I don't care whether or not a person's a bad person. I only care about the outcomes of their actions. To me, the difference between a person who votes Trump because they hate black people and a person who votes Trump because they have this rich internal culture of ignorance. They watch a bunch of Crowder and Poole and stuff, and they think that Donald Trump is anti-establishment and they need to uproot the system, et cetera, et cetera. To me, these people are identical, at least with regards to their casting a vote for Trump. It leads to the same outcomes.
They're identical. They're identical in that specific action. They're identical in terms of what they do. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's more to human I think that there's more to human beings than what necessarily they just do.
Oh, you're gonna morally speaking, I'll never agree to that. It's
okay. I mean, I guess in that case that we can. I don't really agree with that. But like my main point was that like I thought like I kind of went in thinking that like we were gonna like have a debate about like the like moral efficacy of this stuff, and it seems like we basically agree. Like my main point is that I think that like because I mean you are a consequentialist, you value the consequences. I think that like when you're talking, like when you look at like just imagine for a second you're just like some normie like conservative person, and like maybe you saw like Vaush debate like AJW or some shit. I don't know. And like then you see like that George Floyd video, and it's like, well, if you're watching this and you're black, they want you dead, or like whatever the fuck. And it's like, well, like imagine you're them. You're just gonna think, well, I don't want black people dead, so this person's just an idiot or like an asshole.
Well, that's
you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You would do the same thing with lefties, for example. With lefties, it would be like, so I criticize lefties all the time, okay? So imagine if I said all lefties are stupid. Well, I don't believe that. If I said lefties online are fucking morons. Wait, I do say that. Hold on. Let me think of a counterpoint, okay? Okay, here we go. Lefties are really fucking bad at economics, okay? Now, I do say that reductively sometimes, but generally speaking, what I'm actually trying to do there or say there is that a lot of lefties pick up really lazy intellectual habits, and that if you actually put a bit of effort into it, you can be an incredibly salient and intelligent critic of capitalism. But if I say all lefties are bad at economics, then a lot of lefties who otherwise believe themselves to be economically literate are going to disregard anything that I have to say because they believe that my initial qualification has already revealed itself to be irrational, that it doesn't have any basis in reality. Obviously, that's not the goal. You want people to take you seriously.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So rhetorically, I agree with all of that. However, like, ignorance can only go so far, man. I mean, slave owners probably thought that they were fine, upstanding citizens as well. In fact, I know they did.
I mean, like, sure. Like, I think that like ignorance can like only go so far. I mean, as far as like if someone's like a literal neo-Nazi, I'm kind of comfortable saying like, okay, even if you're ignorant, you're still like kind of a bad person.
Most Nazis were indoctrinated by the regime. The Hitler Youth, the Hitler Youth.
I mean, like
literally, like day one indoctrination.
Actually, you know what? Like, you're probably right. Now I think about it, like, actually, yeah. You know what? Sorry, that was a dumb point because you're probably right.
But that's what I mean. But if I said like Nazis are fucking terrible people, you wouldn't have an issue with me saying that, would you? We all draw our lines somewhere.
I mean, I'd have less of an issue because like Nazis. Because I feel like it's less of a generalization because I think Nazis are a comparatively small percentage of the American population. And I feel like a bit more comfortable saying that, like when like conservatives are like 40-45% of America. I just feel
for
like
a while Nazis were 100% of Nazi Germany, right? I mean,
sure, but like I'm more referring to like neo-Nazis, like not like Nazis back in like the 1930s. Like then you can make arguments like it had a lot to do with like the economic downturn of the Weimar Republic and like indoctrination.
But there's always an excuse.
You're right. It's not an excuse per se, but like it's like in the same way that it's not in the same way that like the fact that like African Americans tend to disproportionately see like socioeconomic downturn is not like an excuse for like people.
What would it take for you to think a person is a bad person? So I want to make it clear again. I don't care. I don't know what a bad or a good person is. These terms are meaningless to me. Occasionally, I'll say a person is a bad person, but when I say that, and I want to make it clear to my audience, I'm saying that as a shorthand for this person does bad things. So I don't care to make any statements about a person's moral worth in and of itself, ever. Because I don't think people have moral worth in and of themselves or moral value. It's all about what we do. What's in our heads stays in our heads. What we do with our bodies is what matters. Morally speaking, at least. So with that being said, like, what would it take for a person to be a bad person to you? Because everyone, I mean, rapists and murderers alike, they tend to believe they have a reason for doing what they're doing, you know?
Sure, but I mean, I think that like
Oh, chat's saying that you should turn off Discord notifications.
Oh, sorry. I think that like it kind of depends on like what you like think you're doing. So like for example, like if you're like a school shooter who has somehow deluded themselves into believing that like by going into a school with an AK-47 and shooting up a bunch of people, that's somehow going to make the world a better place.
But they tend to, don't they?
That's something that's so very clearly like wrong that I would have to say, okay, there must be something fundamentally wrong with you for you to make that decision. But like I don't know if you're like
feel like these are arbitrary boundaries, though. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt or anything. Just like, I mean, I imagine most people who commit like horrible fucking mass shootings or whatever, they're either doing it for what they believe is a just political purpose, or they're doing it because they think that the people that went to their school or their work or whatever are like bad people, and they're like some sort of avenging angel that has been sent from God to deal judgment.
I mean, I guess, but I guess I also think that I'm sorry, I don't want this to come off like a pivot. But I do think that like one thing we kind of have to realize is that like let's be honest, like I think that there's a big difference between like voting in a presidential administration where your vote is one in tens of millions, and it's not like you single-handedly are like resulting in the outcome of an election. Like, let's be honest, a vote on its own, maybe like in some local elections it might be valuable, but like on a national level, I mean, it's important, obviously, but like in the grand scheme of things, it means very little. Like versus like when like you go into a school and kill people, like you are meaningfully and directly in a much more broad and serious way making people's lives worse.
So yeah, obviously something like a school shooter is way more direct than casting a vote for Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, I mean, Donald Trump means more hundreds of thousands of people dying from COVID. It means people being deported from our country. It means escalation of military action in Yemen. Like, if we want to get direct, now, of course, your single vote doesn't on its own make any of those things happen, but that's the way our system works. The whole point of democracy is that you decentralize responsibility for the collective actions of a nation. Sure, a president may do X or Y, but we voted for that motherfucker. And conservatives voted for that motherfucker. And I think they bear moral weight for that. And if I was somebody who was directly on the hook for the consequences of the voting decisions of conservatives, I would not be in any way assuaged by the reassurance that, hey, at least I was killed indirectly. Like if I'm dying because my health care doesn't cover pre-existing conditions, which Trump continuously lied about saying that he would have a plan for, or if I got deported because DACA was cut, or if I died from COVID, I don't think I'd be very convinced, like, oh, well, conservatives didn't know what they were doing, even though all the facts were available to them, and we live in an unprecedented era of technological availability where literally anyone could have more access to what's going on than even the most well-educated noblemen 200 years ago, you know?
I mean, like, again, I think that like even with that knowledge, I think that like most people are like politically illiterate, but I mean, like you said, that can only get you so far. I think that like but like I think that like as far as like again, to me, like voting is a comparatively small action in terms of like what it does. And obviously, like if I was someone dying of if I was someone who was dying of COVID, or if I was like getting deported, I probably would not be very happy with conservatives. But I also think that like they're probably the majority of the anger and venom and rage that they have should be directed at the state and the agents that were responsible for it. Because at the end of the day, I think they're the ones who are more responsible for it than like some politically illiterate guy in Wisconsin who voted for Trump in 2016 because he thought he was going to bring all the manufacturing jobs back. Like the people, like the state actors for me are the ones who are like
why the state aren't the state actors only doing what they were told to do by their voters? How can you blame them?
I mean, like, but like, I'm talking about like on an individual level here, because
yeah,
I mean,
but
fundamentally,
the problem is that your system of assigning responsibility here is like not tautologically, sorry. It's like by default incapable of assigning responsibility for voting decisions because you're only assigning responsibility for individual action. In which case, sure, you have the president. What about the president's advisory council? Like, what about all the individual state agents who enact anything the president legislates?
Can I cut you off here? Like those people hold a
wait, can you turn off Discord pings? Just set yourself to do not disturb on Discord.
Oh, I'm sorry. So like the difference there is that like those types of people have a significant amount of political power and political sway, and like their actions like really meaningfully.
What if they think they're doing the right thing?
Harm people's lives. The actions of an individual voter like don't really.
Yeah, that's what everyone says. This is the tragedy of the commons. But if you let people think that way, then you let people get away with horrible fucking things. The average, like, What about like Wehrmacht or SS soldiers? A lot of like an individual SS agent doesn't have a tremendous amount of power once they're inducted into the organization. Are they not responsible for like the Jews they round up from beneath the basement floorboards of the houses they raid?
Like that's because again, like there's the voting someone does is comparatively small compared to like the actions of someone who is actively like committing individual like acts of, like they
You're
are
committing the
responsible
individual act of voting for Donald Trump.
like an individual act, but like my argument is that like that's a small act compared to the act of like rounding up children and like Jewish
Sure,
children.
of course, yes.
shooting.
Compare it again. I'm not trying to say that it's as bad to vote for Trump as it is to. Where is that rock? Oh, there was another giant. I see. I'm not saying that every Trump voter is as bad as a school shooter. I'm saying that Trump voters bear responsibility for what they do, and I don't have an issue with people being angry at them for the decisions they make.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I don't think that like I mean, I think that like everyone, I would say like bears the responsibility for the people who they vote for. You know, like with Biden, like the drone strikes that he will commit. You know, I was not legally of age to vote for Biden, but if I could, I would have. And I think like you and I bear some level of moral responsibility for that. Like if I met like some like Pakistani who had gotten like drone bombed by like Biden, he's like, hey, like what the hell, like. Probably have a
so
right
the
to do
issue
that.
with that is only two people could have become president. I think Trump was demonstrably worse in many, many, many ways.
Yeah, I think
obviously
that's true.
Biden is going to do bad stuff during his administration, but I think there's a pretty big difference between saying this is the lesser of two evils, we have to go with that, and this is the worse of the two, I want that. I think there's a pretty big difference between those two decisions.
Okay, I mean, I would agree with you, because you and I have similar political ideologies, but like someone else could very easily say the opposite. Like someone could say, I don't know, like I'm just using like a random example. Like someone in 2016 could say like, hey man, I think Hillary's gonna start World War III by like putting no-fly zones in Syria, which probably would not have started World War III, but still. You know, I think that I want there to be a living planet. So like,
yeah, and they're wrong.
Obviously, that person is wrong per se, but like you could, but someone like in their mind could still like think that in the same way, and that doesn't mean they're
they
not
can think that. Yeah, but your justification here seems to be that if a conservative can ever in their head justify the bad things they do, that means that you can't hold them responsible for it. But all people who do all bad things.
Here, hang on. I'm sorry. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that like, I don't disagree with you on the idea that you should hold them responsible, maybe not for like the act happening, but at least for them like implicitly supporting the action taking place. But I feel like if we don't do the same thing for like us, then we're just holding a double standard. Like
what double standard?
Well, if we are to say to conservatives like you are bad because you are voting for policies that harm, take your pick, policy, the planet, black people, trans people, whatever the hell. I feel like it would be unfair for us to not then turn around and for us like Democrats to have to take the blame for like the shit that goes on under our watch, you know, the drone strikes, the wars. Like it's,
I think
like,
people should think
that they're the lesser evil, and you'd be right. But like we still have a moral obligation to that, and to just say like, well, we have like no moral obligation in that regard. I mean, in that case, hold
on. It's not a matter of moral obligation, because the bad things that are going to happen under Biden are in all likelihood would have also happened under Trump, but worse. I don't think that like for what action do we bear moral responsibility there? That's odd to me. Like, so if Biden does some terrible shit, like really bad, like something worse than what Trump would have done, I don't know, start some new fucking war or something, obviously that's awful. I don't think anyone voted for him for that reason. I don't think people expected him to do those things. But everything about Trump and all the ways in which he was worse was out there, open and on the table. From his callous disregard for human life, to his xenophobia, to his racism, to his ignorance or just non-existent belief on global warming. All these things were just open. They were just out there for everyone to see. And people, and they can delude themselves into thinking that they voted for Trump because he was anti-establishment. In my experience, very few people who say that actually believe that. I think a lot of people voted for Trump because, just fact of the matter, a lot of these people think that discrimination, bigotry, and et cetera, are things of the past. They don't exist anymore. And that SJWs, for whatever political relevance they have, are a hyper-protective elite class of social arbiters who are destroying America by arbitrarily assigning reverse discrimination in a way to compensate for non-existent failings. And because they believe that, they are willing to sacrifice everything. They'll toss the planet into the sun for that. There's only so much moral credence I can assign these people. There are some who legitimately have deluded themselves into those positions, but there are people who deluded themselves into thinking that slavery was good for black people because it allowed black people to come over from Africa to the North American region, and because they were treated essentially as they're like little hotel guests in your plantation, you know? They were sponsored by the plantation owners. That was a common belief back during the slavery days. And I imagine that helped people sleep soundly at night. But when you, and this is where I'm assigning blame to you, when you say stuff like, oh, well, you can't blame people for X or Y, well, you know, like you should really hold the state actors accountable, you're implicitly giving them permission to keep doing that shit. You're letting them get away with it. The real consequentialist response here would be to put a lot of pressure on people who act that way because it disincentivizes them from engaging in that behavior in the future.
I mean, okay, but I like my main argument that I came here to discuss with you was like I feel like you're kind of slightly misconstruing me. I'm not saying that these people have no moral agency for what they do. Like I feel like we've kind of spiraled a lot from what was the sort of initial point of conversation. I'm not saying that these people have no responsibility for what they do. Like we all have moral responsibility for our actions. Duh. My argument was that I don't necessarily think that voting for Trump would be, as far as like its meaningful consequences, would necessarily be enough to make someone like a bad person per se.
I don't know what a bad person is.
I mean, because I mean, like, there are some actions, like, okay, let me put it like this. There are some singular actions that you can do that are essentially bad enough that, like, there's no real redemption for you, or like, there's no way, like, you could be like a good person outside of that. Like,
this isn't
like committing like a school shooting, or like
this isn't
or, like,
language that I use. I can't relate to this. Also, please turn your Discord notifications off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you keep saying you're sorry, but then it keeps happening. So,
oh, hang on.
just click on your little profile pic down in the bottom left, and click on Do Not Disturb, and then you won't get any more notifications.
Okay, hang on. Button. Let's see, noise suppression.
Not quite. You see your profile pic down there?
Yeah.
Yeah, just click on that, and there will be.
Do not disturb. Okay,
yeah,
there we go.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Thanks.
Day by day.
So here's I think that so like my main argument was that I don't is that like there are some actions that are so singularly terrible that they're essentially irredeemable, or like you can't really be a good person and do those actions.
I don't
like committing like a mass shooting or like something like that. And I don't think that like voting for like a candidate, even a destructive candidate in a presidential election where there's like millions and millions of people, is enough to necessarily say that someone like is a bad person. And especially considering that a lot of people are politically illiterate.
Would you say they did a bad thing?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, then that to me is the same thing. This bad person redemption thing, I don't. If a person starts doing good things, they're being a good person.
Bad thing doesn't necessarily mean that like they're a bad person. You know, I might like get angry and like scream at my mom or something, but like that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. Like I might have done a bad thing, but I'd
say voting for a fascist is a bad thing, significant enough that I could make a judgment about your character from it.
I mean, I guess we're probably not really going to we're probably not really ever going to agree on this. I think that like
now, again, I just want to say rhetorically, I still recognize that stuff like this doesn't sway conservatives. Nobody wants to believe they're the bad guy, except for nothing. Never mind. It was
Just maybe some weird people out there are like.
No, I was gonna say Taylor Swift.
I mean, I
Were they
would
the one
say
who did the song? No, Billie Eilish. They were the ones. Sorry. There you go. Yeah, sorry. It would have been funnier if I had remembered off the top of my head. Okay. But no. Anyway, yeah. I don't really care about who's a good or a bad person. I just think voting for Trump is a bad thing, and I think people can and should get angry over it. And I think that conservatives, generally speaking, are morally inferior to non-conservatives, unless the non-conservative is like fascist or the Nazi or
I mean, I guess like
one of the worst brands.
I guess like in terms of like their politics, then sure. As far as like otherwise, I don't really know. Like,
I'd say generally. I think there's also a lot of research that conservatives tend to be more fearful, less intelligent. That they tend to be they tend to be more insular, more xenophobic. In a lot of ways, I think that conservatism maps onto a really negative portrait of human behavior. That conservatism is something that people tend to fall into when they just aren't like super cool, like me and like you. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I used to be a conservative, and now I'm not. Just kind of
people change.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I mean, I don't really think like I mean, I was like a conservative for like 9 months. I wasn't even like keep in mind, I was like an anti-Trump style, like neocon type. I had some like kind of cringe beliefs, but I wasn't like the worst. I wasn't like a fascist or anything like that. I guess like thinking about like just from my perspective, I mean, I don't really think I was like fundamentally all that different a person back then than I was now. I just had some beliefs about certain things, and now I don't. And it's like I don't really think I was like that different a person. If you want to say that there are, I think that like there are certain like negative qualities that can be like associated with like conservative leaning individuals. But I guess like when it comes to like moral stuff, I mean, like, I guess, I don't know. I mean, human beings are like individuals. I've met plenty of conservatives who seem like otherwise normal people who just don't really have like not particularly good political views,
Yeah, I just wonder how much like that kind of logic would comfort like a slave to all the kind of people out there who are anti-abolition.
I mean, it's not like at the end of the day, like my main issue isn't even really like this conversation got like sidetracked into like being about like this stuff. Honestly, I don't even really care that much about this stuff. If you personally like hate conservatives or whatever, like that's fine. I don't really care. My issue is that like I think that you like constantly venting about it like on stream is really bad for like recruiting people over onto the movement.
Well, I conceded that in the first 10 seconds. Here, wait. I can see a boss arena when I see one. So I'm gonna have to head off. Do you want to hit us with a final meme on your way out?
Okay. So thank you so much for having me on your stream. I've been wanting to do this for so long. I think it went pretty well, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe people. I haven't been looking at your chat. What do they think of me? Do they like
me to rate my conversations afterwards? What the fuck?
I don't know. I'm genuinely curious. I want to know what like people in your chat tend to think of me. Because I mean, like I said, I'm a pretty big fan. And
never look at chat, okay? If you're ever coming on to talk to me, never look at chat because they'll always.
Okay, I'm not looking at chat. It's cool, but I do want to say I appreciate this convo a lot. And also one other thing that I do have to say, I guess I should say, there's this guy on it's some messages from DSR Leftyville because I was talking to them right before the stream. One is that there's a guy out there, his name is the Falcone General, and he wanted me to shout him out. And I disagree with him on a lot of stuff, but he's a cool guy to talk to. So if you're into that stuff, then check it out. Also, Vaush, by any chance, do you have any interest in boxing Jason Unruh?
Boxing Jason Unruh? Is that something Jason Unruh wants to do?
That is something that he wants to do, yes.
Hold on, let me just remind myself. Pull up a picture of Jason Unruh. I don't often say this, but I think I could win.
That'd be funny. I would love to see that. I would like to see a debate between you two. I did debate him. I debated him in Fellow Traveler Was Modding, and I also debated Leftism Today, who you debated previously. Interesting talk. But anyway, I mean, you got a new boss to deal with. But I'm just super happy that we were able to have this convo. And good to talk to you, man.
Thank you. Be well, okay?
Be well. See ya.
All right, peace. All right. I already got the shortcut. Jesus Christ. I got the elevator shortcut. Chill. We already got it. We're good. We're good. All right. Nice. The fuck was that? That was a conversation with a fan. You scared of Jason Unruh? Yeah, I'm scared that if I knock him out in one punch, he'll fall on me. All right. Yeah, we got to turn the sand on.